All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Khouri, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. This podcast is part of a short series to help and encourage current and potential small business owners to improve and grow. I will be talking to experts in their fields, as well as successful business owners, and we will be discussing what they do and how they do it so well. Initially, when a business is established, the purpose is to generate an income for that person or for their family. But it's really important from a business perspective to look at the big picture and to think about what is the business going to do moving forward? How is there an exit strategy for this business? Is this actually a business, or is it just something that's paying the bills? Today, I've invited Andrew Lorking to be with us from Polaris Partners to talk about this very topic. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic. Personally, for me, when I see my clients, when I see people going through business, they always plan out the initial parts of the business, but very rarely do they plan the end of the business, because I don't know if they just assume the business is always going to be there, or whether they'll just sort it out. You know, they'll just get there when they get there, type of thing. Do you think that's probably the issue, that people just don't realize how big of a topic this is?
Yes, I think it is. What happens is, as you know, when a business owner starts a business, there's lots of energy and thought put into, getting the business together, working out what it is they're going to do, what their value is to their customers, and how that's going to drive revenue, etc. But what a lot of business owners don't understand is that 100% of those business owners will exit their business, and that's either by design or by default. What we're trying to help business owners do is get the best design of the exit of their business. When I say they will exit by default, that'll be either because the business doesn't last for whatever reason, it might be shut down, or the business owner may pass away before they get to the point of selling the business. And so really what we're trying to do, I guess, is get a better outcome for business owners, and for them to understand what the end game is in that regard.
And that's hard, isn't it, sometimes? Because I mean, most businesses, when they're first established, some people have a plan, but even those that do have a plan don't normally know where the business is going to end up later on. Whether they're going to expand or stay the same, or like what you said, fail, which unfortunately most businesses do.
Yeah. No, absolutely. If you speak to most people who start a business, of course, they've got grandiose plans about that. And that's good. It's good to have those big goals and aspirations, but that doesn't always work out. And so, it does require that those business owners keep looking at what the end goal might be, and reassess that over time, and adjust their plans and their expectations to reach that. Part of what we help them do is also to understand how to drive value into their business. So, there's typically 8 key factors that we have a look at, which will help them to understand how they can get the best value out of their business at whatever that exit looks like. If you think about what an exit looks like in a business, or the valuation of a business when you get to an exit, it's very simplistically, I guess, it's 2 parts of an equation. One is, what are your earnings, or what is your EBITDA, your earnings before interest, tax and depreciation, and you multiply that by a multiple that represents the risk that sits within the business. And so we can help business owners on both sides of that equation, but really where the better leverage comes from is to work out how to increase that multiple. Because if you think about it, if you can increase a multiple from, say, 3 times earnings to 4 times earnings, well, what you've done there is you've increased the value of the business by 25%. And so looking at the factors that drive those multiples is a pretty key element to helping the business owner work out how to get the best value out of their business.
So essentially, it's really asking people, really this is asking people to think about their business and think about, okay, yes, it's paying the bills, yes, it's making some money, but like what you said, what is the actual value of that? Like, for example, you can have two, I don't know, I like to use fish and chip shops as an example for some reason, but let's say there's two fish and chip shops, and one of them, for example, and they both make the same money, they both earn, they make $500,000 a year, for example, but one of them has $200,000 in expenses and one of them has $300,000 in expenses. Is it from that perspective, like from a cost point of view, that you're looking at it?
Well, look, that is one part of it. But, one of the things we like to say to clients is that you can't save yourself rich. It's very hard to drive a lot of value by trying to save on the costs. Sure, it's a factor and it helps, particularly if your costs are out of hand or not well managed. But really what you want to do is have a look at things like, does that shop have the name of the owner on it? And therefore, is that a brand that belongs to the owner? And so if the owner goes to sell that shop, are we then left in a position where the value of that shop kind of goes down because the owner's no longer there, or the brand of the shop is associated with the owner? So it gets difficult for them to leave that brand behind. Or can we think about creating a recurring revenue somehow in that environment? So can we create a subscription model where people will, pay $100 a month and that entitles them to come along and pick up 3 meals a month kind of thing? Those are the sorts of things that actually drive value into the business, where you can create value that way.
Okay, so I understand now, and also even from so really it's making sure that what someone actually has is a business.
Exactly right.
That it's a real, like I think it was Robert Kiyosaki, and I read his book Rich Dad Poor Dad years ago. I think this is actually in his book, but he says that a real business is a business that you can go away, leave for I think 2 or 3 years, come back and find it more profitable.
Exactly right.
Than when you left it.
Absolutely, and that's one of the elements we have a look at in terms of exactly that. If if the business owner was unable to work in the business for a period of 3 to 6 months, what does the business look like when they come back? Has it still been run correctly? Does it still make profits? All of those sorts of things, and so we kind of work on, right, how do we put a management team in place if that's required, and have we got the right people in the business that can help to run this business without the business owner? So all of those are questions that we have to just keep bringing to the surface so that they're thought about and that they are considered, because all of that will help to drive value into the business. Now, this even is applicable where a business owner might not be selling their business, but there might be a natural heir within the business. Perhaps it's his son or his daughter, or her son or daughter, and so all of these things are still applicable, these factors, because at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to get the information and the processes out of the business owner's head and into a process, if you like, almost corporatize it to the extent that it's available to the business. And so, mum or dad who's had the original idea and has developed the business generally have a particular way of thinking, which has got them to the point of having a successful business. Now, whilst they might have some influence on their children or the heirs that are taking over the business in the future, it doesn't necessarily equate that because you live with a person or you're influenced by a person that you think exactly the same way. And so, trying to de-risk the business on that handover is also part of making sure that there's value in the business going forward.
Yeah, and I'm assuming these are many things that a lot of people may not actually realize themselves, because we talk about this a lot, like even with me as a financial advisor talking to clients, but even in this series when I've been talking to some experts like yourself in this small business series that we're doing, a lot of people underestimate the value in having someone external come into a business and to look at how things are being done, because it's just like a relationship. It's just like anything. It's like, you could have the smartest people in the world, the most business savvy people in the world, but sometimes there are things that they're going to miss because they'll be doing things the way they've always done them. Whereas someone like yourself, for example, would come in and be like, well, hold on a second. I know you've done this for 20 years, but have you thought of this? Or I know you've thought of this, but have you thought of doing it this way? Because it's going to give you this outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that old saying, you don't know what you don't know. And so the ability to have somebody external with some new ideas and I guess a fresh perspective on your business as it currently is invaluable in most instances, because it just brings up questions that haven't yet been asked and or even answered. So I think it's a bit like having a coach. The top professional golfers and tennis players all have coaches, and that's because they can't see themselves. They need that external input to be able to reach the top of their profession. It's a very similar concept, I guess, in the sense of just having a fresh set of eyes and perspective, having a look at the way that a business is run and structured, and then taking that on and executing on the ideas that make sense.
And what are some practical tips that you'd give somebody that's listening to this? That's okay. They have a business and they think things are going well. Apart from engaging someone like yourself, of course, what are some practical tips or some practical areas to look at?
Yeah, look, from a practical point of view, I guess the obvious one is to obviously have a look at financial performance. And I guess most business owners are across that stuff in a relatively meaningful way, particularly if they're an SME type business. Cash is king. It's the lifeblood of the business. And so that sort of stuff they'll be looking at on a very regular basis. I guess from a tip point of view, though, you've got to have a look at putting in place things like understanding your customer satisfaction. So there are really good tools nowadays that allow you to measure the net promoter score of your customers, and that gives you some good insight.
These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a free 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.
The other one is to have a look at how your management team is structured. Is the business very reliant on you as the business owner to make all of the decisions? Because if that's the case, it's going to be very hard to sell the business without you as the business owner. So just having a look at those higher level strategic things that need to be considered when you're thinking of your business. The other thing is when you get to the point of deciding that you want to sell your business, it's probably too late to be working on the things that can drive value. And so my recommendation to all business owners is to always be thinking about an exit, always be preparing for what a potential exit could look like. And, unfortunately what happens is with some business owners is their health will fail them. They might be pretty stressed out by the business itself, or there might be some other health issues that come along that are unexpected. And if you're not in a position to execute on some sort of an exit, whether that's a sale or whether it's moving the business to somebody in the family, you can really put the business at risk from that perspective. So I would always recommend that business owners look kind of out at a 2 to 3 year timeline on an exit, and start preparing for that, even if that isn't the timeline for the actual exit. An example of that would be we've had a client in the last couple of years who came to us and said, "Hey, look, we're reaching retirement age and we want to sell the business. Can you put it on the market for us?" And I said, "Well, okay, let's have a look at what you've got." And we needed to do things like do a bit of a restructure. They had property sitting in the business corporate structure which wasn't appropriate. So that takes time to get that sorted. They needed to get a different management team in so that the business wasn't totally reliant on them. And so all of these things took time. And in fact, it took us 2 years to get the business to market when they thought, it would be a 3 to 6 month process. It turns out that it was a 2 to 3 year process.
And I'm assuming it's probably some of those businesses, the ones that have been around for a long time, that are established and where they have a particular, essentially the business owner that's been doing so many different things. I'm assuming they are some of the businesses. I'm not going to say the main or the most at risk, but they're probably some of the businesses that probably struggle to get themselves ready for sale, I'm assuming, because there's always been that one person that's been there, that's been doing all these things, and it's been doing it for so long, and the business has essentially started to rely on that person. It's like when you go to a coffee shop, for example, and I mean, this isn't a direct example, but, I used to go to a coffee shop 15 years ago where I used to work around the corner, and the owner was always making the coffees, and every day I talked to the owner. He was always the one making the coffees, would have the chats. Half the reason I went there was actually for the chats. The other half was for the coffee. And the coffee was great. Coffee was amazing. And then this period occurred where he basically, he left. I don't know if he left or he sold the business, but essentially he just wasn't there anymore. No one was giving us an exact answer when we were asking the other staff members, but who replaced him was another person who didn't really like to talk at all. Coffee was average. And that business literally closed down about 6 months later, so because I felt that it relied on that one person being there. The service was built around that person's personality and it was built around that person being alive, basically, and being there every day doing the same thing.
Yeah. Look, and some businesses are exactly like that. Some businesses you can't escape that. And I think hospitality is a good example of that. But if we extend the example of what you've just said, and let's assume that the owner of that business who had that big personality was able to create a brand out of that personality, and then go and open up 2 or 3 or 4 other coffee shops with the same name, the same reputation, and took himself off the tools, if you like, and became the personality behind all of those shops and kind of rotated around them, still brought the personality to the party, but had other people making the coffee, but still engaging. This guy was still engaging with customers in different locations. That might have been an example where we could have helped him expand his empire, if you like, and drive value into what he was doing and his personality and the brand that he could build around that.
Yes, and as you said earlier, if he had planned for it before he even knew he was going to leave the business, he would have probably spent 12 months training other people or finding probably staff that were very similar to him and that aligned with the values of him and his business as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And it actually, when you were talking, I was actually thinking of several examples that I know where it's actually quite sad, where some business owners would dedicate their life to a business, not even think of an exit strategy. And the second they can't work due to health or retirement or whatever it may be, they've had to literally just close down the business when, if they had put in this effort and set things up in a way to structure it more effectively, then, they could have sold their business. They could have at least got something for it instead of having to literally just close it down and retire.
Yeah. And in some cases, that's the... some business owners have that particular mindset in that they set up a business because it provides them with an income. And hopefully in those instances, they've had the wherewithal or the foresight or the advice from people like yourselves to take some of the additional cash that's spat out of that business and go and invest it into other assets so that they do provide for the day that they no longer have that business providing them income. Because as you say, what happens in a lot of those cases is the business just naturally folds and ceases to exist. But what we try and do, I guess, is have that discussion with those particular types of owners and say, hey, have you thought about a way in which we can get some value into this business and it can have some longevity post your involvement in it. And that deals with some of the things that we've been speaking about this morning, which is, how do we create a recurring revenue out of what you do, for example, or how do we make sure that there's a couple of good people in the business that can take over the management of it? How do we make sure that customers and suppliers aren't reliant on you as the business owner to be involved, in the business? Those sorts of things are the things that we try and help people understand, that they can tackle to drive some value into their business.
And even taking money out of it altogether. I feel if instead of having a business that dies with the owner, essentially, if it continues to grow, that's that person's legacy. Most businesses, not most, but a lot of businesses that I've seen, when they're first established, it's not just about the money. It's about other things. Like someone might have a passion for a particular topic, whether it's for ethical reasons or whether it's something that's close to that person's heart. And that business, instead of, again, being something like an asset or just a way of generating income and paying the bills, it stops when that person stops. If it's built properly, it could be it would essentially would be their legacy. It would be something that continues to serve that purpose, to whether it's helping people or whether it's providing a service to a community that lacks it or really needs it.
Yeah.
So to me, I just think about that as well. I just think about, the financial side of things is so important, so important. But at the same time, it's everything else as well.
Sure, but even that comes along with some challenges. So what we have found is that in a lot of cases, business owners are quite emotionally attached to their business. As you would imagine, you've spent your life's work building this business, getting valuable customers, creating the product or service that you're providing, and one of the things that we try and help people understand, or business owners understand, is that whilst they think about the business as effectively one of their children, if you like, and of course your children are absolutely priceless, well, your business is not priceless. Your business has a value to it. And so we try and help them understand what that value is, or what at least the minimum value is of that business, so that we can help them start forming in their minds, what the value of the business is, what the expectation is around what an exit would look like, and help them to frame that transaction when it does happen, so that there's no seller's remorse, if you like, a year down the track, which unfortunately is a big percentage of business owners. There's quite a bit of research out there that has had a look at how business owners have reacted or felt post the sale of their business. And in a lot of cases, there's some disappointment, if you like, around how the business has ended up, or what the expectation of valuation was, or what their life now looks like post the exit. And all of those things are important. We tend to work with financial planners and other people who are advising these clients around how to design their life post their business, because generally these business owners have spent many hours a week working in and on the business, and you take that away if they haven't built up a lifestyle that includes a number of friends, or some hobbies, or some sporting activities, or something. A year down the track, they're not as happy as you would think that they should be.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I relate it to selling the family home, or selling the car, selling a car that you've had for decades, that you're very close to, or something that means something to you, that you've worked hard to mold. It's it can be actually a very emotional journey. I've never thought of it that way. But
it's surprisingly hugely emotional. As an example, we have a client at the moment who have the business has been around since the mid-60s. So it's a 55-year-old business, And in the times where it wasn't going so well, we'd say to the business owners, have you thought about shutting the business down? And they would say, I can't. There are 30 other families that rely on this business that I pay a weekly wage to. So not only are they concerned about the business and the clients, but they're concerned about the people in the business too, and providing them with a means to make a living. So there are a number of these emotional points that come into play, which need to be considered.
And Andrew, if anybody wanted to get in contact with you and the team at Polaris and Partners, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the best way to get hold of us is at www.polarispartners.com.au. And within our website is a link to a tool that we use that is a questionnaire that business owners can fill in. Takes 15 to 20 minutes, and will give us a good view on where they're currently at. And what we do from that is prepare a report that effectively goes through a scoring mechanism and gives them a score out of 100 based on the 8 key drivers of value that are asked in that questionnaire, and we can then share that with them and show them in each of those key drivers where, if they do some work on them and we increase the score on those particular drivers, how that helps to increase the value of their business, and that's really one of the cornerstone tools that we use to start that conversation and to get people to understand the different levers that they can pull that will help them to drive some value into their business before an exit happens.
Yeah, perfect. And what I'll do is I'll put that link to that website in the description of this episode as well, so it's easy for people to find and click on.
Excellent.
Andrew, thank you so much for your time. Lastly, I like to finish my episodes off with a dad joke, and I thought this was quite appropriate, but why is money called dough?
Why is that?
Because we all need it. You're a dad, so you'll appreciate this.
I do appreciate that. I'm sure my boys wouldn't, but
yeah, exactly.
But there you go. No kid ever does.
Yeah, pretty much. Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases, and feel free to share this episode with any friends or family that you think it might benefit. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.